So this is a religious question. I would like to know why Jesus came if we always was and always will be.
Same reason you did. Same reason you all do. In other words, no one comes. What's in your mind? Why do you think, in other words, do you think that, what could possibly be the reason that anyone would come other than that you are eternal beings and you've come for the creative experience?
So are you saying Christ came for the experience as well?
Of course. Of course, there are no exceptions.
It just seemed sort of a dramatic way to help us out.
Well, it hasn't been that helpful, actually. More people die over the things that surround Christianity than all other things put together.
Correct. Correct.
So we know what you mean. Well, what do you mean? The helping out part.
Well, what I mean is, if we will always exist, why the intervention?
Well, first of all, there never is any intervention. Intervention sounds like assertion, and there is no assertion. There's only attraction. So what happens is you're taking a historical figure who has rightly earned the place of a religious figure. There are many who feel that it's blasphemy to call him anything other than the Son of God, and so we will. But we will not call Jesus the Son of God in any other context than that we put you in the same category. In other words, everyone who comes forth is an extension of source energy. And everyone comes forth to explore the contrast and to become. And his story is not different. In other words, he came like all, did his part of banging around, put all kinds of things into his vortex, even though he wasn't calling it that in those days, separated himself from the trauma and the struggle, came into alignment with who he had become, and then stood in that vibration of greater knowing that he had carved out of this life experience, and then told the story of that. And others who were witnessing hardly anybody ever coming into alignment with who they are, then pronounced him unique and marvelous and king and God and saint and son of God, when what he was just a regular guy tuning into who he was and teaching through the clarity of his example that everyone else could do the same thing. And he said that every day that people would listen to him. That's the story that he told. He said, I am not that which you are not. He said, is your faith that makes you whole. He said, come into the vortex, come into the light. He said, the kingdom of heaven is within you. In other words, everything that he said was about, I am an eternal being and so are you. And maybe there was some of, and I will show you the way. But not one time ever, and it's a distortion if you're hearing it today, did he ever say or mean to imply, I will come forth and do for you what I see you cannot do for yourself. Because it defies all laws of the universe, and it cannot be.
Very good.
And then humans take the part of his story when he was the most out of the vortex, when he was saying, why have you forsaken me? And that's the part of his life story that they dramatize the most. It is the last part that he wants you to remember. He would like you to remember when he was in alignment. He would like you to remember when he was in vibrational alignment with well-being and could hold you as his object of attention. And even though your body was dripping illness, he did not see it. And so wellness was the only thing that you could experience when you were in the presence of his aligned state of being. That's the part he would like you to talk about, you see. He would like you to remember that you are born as liquid love, that you are pure positive energy, and that when you hold yourself in an attitude of hate, you separate yourself from all that is good and all that you want. That's the part that he would like you to remember, you see. He does not want you to remember the day he was out of the vortex and they hammered him up. Nor does he want you to push against that. Nor does he want you to make those your enemy. Nor does he want you to stand in martyrdom against others and make anyone your enemy.
Truth and its emotional response. The wisdom to work that out, the two are feminine elements. Truth and its emotional response, I think, is one thing. But it could be three separate feminine elements of birthing quality of new knowledge in self, concerning self, of the emotional response system that explains self to self. So, in that, when at birth, before the conversion of spiritual self into the second wisdom, there are three separate beings. Okay, so truth and logic is the omnipresent God in logic and truth in influencing us. His Son's ability to reach that light is given to us the same. Intellectual wisdom to reach that light and create as a God does. And then who, self, has its own masculine and feminine elements of all of those things, because they're there giving them to us, because they decided to, because they love us, to see who will and who won't adapt back to their own spiritual lives. Anyway, so there, what's that? 2, 4, 6. So that's 6, right? But then the second wisdom comes in, who also has a masculine and feminine element. So that makes it not 8. It remains, the second wisdom takes its place behind the first two, who must, because of their commitment to provide us truth, logic, and intellectual wisdom as influences, must produce what the truth is. But this second wisdom comes in and distorts everything, first lowering the self-worth, as I've been explaining, but then introduces the mistress wisdoms. But before that happens, here you are now with the 666 thing, and the number that Jesus liked, which was number 7. So, if the self isn't educated and we grow up messed up because of that and confused and not knowing what's real anymore, because of that second wisdom infection of the first, so you now have the double influence, masculine and feminine, inside the three influences: truth and logic, intellect and wisdom, and the dark feminine of the second wisdom, and its masculine element that we know as the ego, speaking in complete opposite of what the truth and goodness is. Anyway, so now if we leave that without following through the direction of the human algorithm of the first wisdom, which is following through with an intent for the goodness that is birthed in you, the knowledge of, which starts with the inner self-work of self-expression, working that out, and then acting through what is known goodness. So you're not acting in the moment. It's like getting drunk. You don't drink and then, you don't take the information and then act immediately, because you kind of get off on that, on the inspiration or the fear or whatever. So you got to stabilize the emotional response. And when you do so, you take it to the number 7. That's your human will, taking all your spiritual elements and deciding, yes, I'm going to be good instead of what the mistress wisdom is describing. See? But she can only exist if justification for the rape of truth happens. And then the pedophilia comes in, to the cunning deception of, yes, all this happens. The cunning deception, just the pedophilic description of what I told you, and comes in and distorts everything and hurts you and separates and divides you. Like, which one do I listen to internally now? Do I listen to the truth and its goodness, or do I listen to a lie and its safety? Spiritual death is in the middle. Spiritual life is in the middle. It's choice, human will. And now your human will is taking it to number 7 instead of letting all that shit stay inside you. That's the 666. You see? The 666 is that. 666 is allowing a spiritual pedophile in with your children being the knowledge of yourself first, and then the knowledge of the outside, which is the environment, which contains a lot of people with the same spiritual elements inside you, just as confused. So what do? We teach those who want and get paid that way in our hearts, and create a lot of income to help people. That's that. I don't know what your plan is, but this is mine. And those are everything that's inside me, and hopefully it's going to be inside you one day with your own intent making from your clarity now, instead of what's left over. You want to see what's left over inside your heart? Go look at a 7-8-year-old who's just gotten out of the grips of a physical pedophile. That's what you look like inside your heart. Not that is a bad thing, but to let you know, right? What's happening for you. You're just as confused for different reasons. It's not sexual, but it's you that it's fucking with, though. Your self-worth level. The end result of the second wisdom is to lower it just enough to get you to perform its will from your fearing. So it injects its own fearing for something for you to be afraid of, and then through the ego's voice, you think you're telling yourself. You're not. It's the influence of the ego's voice saying, if you don't do it, then you're not going to get your need met. And because we're still operating from the distortion of early childhood emotional programming, we're operating from the same voice. Never learning, growing, and evolving anymore, but we're still stuck at 6 years old emotionally. Now's the time to reach number 7. To hit the number 7, I think, for everybody. My first thought was the inspiration of the freedom. It's just that beautiful. And take it from me, I used to be a hardcore back alley junkie. It took me from that to feeling beauty in life. Like, what can do that? Nothing. The people who say they are born in Jesus, it's all bullshit. They're bullshitting themselves because they believe the liars who lied to them. But the liars usually are ones who've been lied to. So I don't know. Ignore their fucking shit. Just look at yourself. There's only one confession, listener, and that's your silence. Working that out, you need help with that. Everybody does, working it out. But you take your truth to God, nobody else, unless you super trust them. That has nothing to do with memory at all, in which we're to take that emotional knowledge, emotional information in the moment, to then learn self and grow a little bit each time we experience something, but that's not what happens. We take the moment, the emotional moment, think back into the past, to then collect the necessary knowledge that we think we need in the moment. And if that's a fear, if it's rooted in fear and you're in self-protection behavior, that means you're searching for self-protection knowledge and not self-expression. When a person works to express themselves, find clarity as the result of that emotional information, which gets translated twice, first internally before speaking, and then once it's spoken in self-expression, you then think again of what you just heard yourself say. So it's not just a one-time event. It interacts with your spiritual elements, born in that oneness, but separated after 6 years old. Complicated thing about the middle place. I used to think the middle place was a place of going back, being accountable, figuring out what you didn't learn because you were too afraid to, and then going into another body to then go learn that lesson. That's what I came to believe about this place. But in Pistis Sophia, it explains something completely fucking different. It's a place where you get trapped, manipulated, and where your self-worth is attacked, where you are then forced through some type of manipulation, the same type that we get here, are forced to stay there and obey that going into another body. But it's not for us that they do this. The people, or whatever's in the middle doing all this, those ones are not doing it for us. They're doing it for them. They need us as virtual reality machines. They live through our decision making somehow. God does. We know how He does that. When a person is good and unselfish, that's God acting in the person, yeah? Well, when evil acts in a person, it's in complete opposite. So what they're saying is in Pistis Sophia is that don't listen to them and know the mysteries, which I'm explaining to you, by the way. Know the mysteries so you can hear them say, why don't you come over here instead in your silence while all this is going on around you, where they call them retributive receivers, meaning retributive. That means that you're going to get punished for the things you did. Fuck me. It's all one big trick, hey? It has to be like this because of the way we're made, which I'm not getting into because we did that already. It's all one big trick that they've been getting away with until now. Now is different. They made us, stole the seed from God to get us to work and think. But that's God in spirit as our Father, not physical Father, man. We were made physically by them. Who, you know what, the first humans the females didn't have breasts or vaginas. Now think about that, which was also in the ancient writings of the same people which Pistis Sophia came from. So it's time to destroy that place, and what I mean by that is don't give in and don't get trapped. And you do that here and now by adjusting to the balanced determined self, leaving the selfish person's behavior behind, the selfish determined self behind, leaving the pleasing determined self behind, and be informed. Look for the knowledge that you ask questions for, get the truth of that knowledge, and act on that knowledge. Add that knowledge to your knowledge base of self until greater knowledge comes. Don't tell yourself, no, I don't know nothing. That's what they need. These retributive receivers, they need you to deny that. Don't deny it. Say, yeah, it's there. I don't know what it is, but this is the knowledge that I have. And that's how they do it. Their number one trick is to lower your self-worth low enough for you to not believe and trust in yourself. And in that moment, you don't, because you are filled with unresolved pain, unresolved anger, unresolved fear. But let's disappear that shit and get on with life. Having said all that, know and understand in the deepest part of you that God forgives us all. It's not a case of that. He knows we're going to fuck up. He knows that we're going to go dark emotionally and do shitty things, do even for some evil things. But it's all forgiven through His mercy. It's all true. That part is true. But the one thing that's not told to us is that we have to rid ourselves of that second wisdom because it's infection to God's realm. That's why there's 5 life cycles hoping that we would get it. Well, we got it. Now we understand now the real separation can take place once people catch on to this. Information, it's just a body of information that Jesus came with. He calls them the keys of knowledge. They're the keys of knowing self. Not only that, it's understanding how the interception and the interceptor works. It's not a monster like you see on TV. It's an intelligent being, a good scientist. An intelligent scientist who made his own fucking humans, but God says they have life in them, so let's see what we can do with it. Because He wants to be our Father God, our Mother God, His masculine and feminine elements, Mother and Father, that He gives us without His knowledge, without it being His uniqueness, but for us so we can build our own uniqueness and then keep that uniqueness. You see, that's what's golden about this. Sure, to the people who made the secondary human, it was like us going to the arcade. Pretty soon we're bored of it and we leave. but God saw life, so he said, okay, we'll grow this creation into the light. It's for those who want to. In other words, you have a choice. You can write your own name in that damn book. If it's not there, you can do that now. All you got to do is realign your heart's thought process cognitively. It takes up the emotional work. None of the challenges that you get in therapy, because there is no fucking therapy. You learn, and then you learn, grow, and evolve from your knowledge base. It's the information is so impactful, so profound in knowing self, since it's been a mystery to understand what that even meant. When people said that, know yourself. Well, what the fuck does that mean, know myself? It's knowing how self is reacting to both its wisdoms. Wisdom's knowing. So the first wisdom, birth, the understanding of the circumstance in truth and logic, understanding the circumstance that impacts us emotionally, in which wisdom takes from the emotional memory to add to the knowledge base in the now, so self can proceed based on a knowledge base and not based on nothing. Evil comes in to separate us from that and hacks the living computer through the electromagnetic pulse in the earth into our hearts and disguises itself as the first wisdom, but it has to work in opposite. Like there, it's the only thing it creates, the only thing it births is fear when in heart's thought of self-expression. So it provides us fear. Fear of potential loss is it speak to us. Silence has its silent voice. This dark feminine element has image in thought without silent voice. So when we become afraid of something, we just see images of what we're afraid of and then react to that emotionally, which is fearful. But the thing is, with our fear, we have a normal fear, but our fear gets amplified when in heart's thought of the potential rejection. You see, so that's what stops us, and that's what separates us and divides and conquers us. What specifically gets conquered, though? It's our first wisdom, knowing self, knowing the uniqueness of self. When we're too afraid and feel low self-worth anyway, then we just proceed on that path and don't do anything about it. But you have to do something about it. It's your only ticket into heaven. Nothing else is. And even if you believe that there's other requirements, go ahead. It doesn't matter as long as you believe that you have to clean yourself. Cleanse your heart's thought process of all that darkness of the emotional self. You get rid of that, and all the other shit disappears. I promise.